For as long as the world can remember, we have associated the name of El Chapo with the Sinaloa Cartel of Mexico. But the true boss never shows up. He observes, commands, and governs. The truly powerful men don't say a word. They just watch the world burn and let their ministers and sidekicks play around causing havoc. Very few people on the globe know who the actual mastermind behind the Sinaloa Cartel is. Like many, you may be fooled to think it is this man, Joaquin Guzman or El Chapo. But meet Ismael Mario Zambada, better known as El Mayo. A man so mysterious that in his illustrious drug lord career of more than 50 years, he has not been caught by the police once. In today's video, we'll dive deep into the untold power of this man, Ismael Zambada, El Mayo, Sinaloa Cartel's greatest drug lord, held over the drug trade of the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. Hold on tight to find some shockingly gruesome details about this long and blood-stained career. Drug lords are not made in a day. They see the hard realities of life, and they're forced into becoming what they become. El Mayo was born to Catholic Christian parents right in the heart of Sinaloa. It was as if he was destined to become the greatest tragic hero of that area. As a young boy, Ismael Zambada was so poor that he had taken up many different meagerly paying jobs even as a teenager. From a waiter to a shoe polisher, you name it, and he had done that. Extreme poverty taught El Mayo two things. Number one, no one was coming to help him. And number two, money was the real god. Even as early as the age of 13, El Mayo began farming marijuana in small quantities to sell to the bigger lords of the day, but he never made any real profit. Misery forced him to crave control and lust for power so badly that he changed the trajectory of his fate. Zambada's first ever real interaction with the drug trade was under the patronage and mentorship of Inez Calderon Quintero, often referred to as one of the kingmakers, because at the time, he did not know he was grooming the world's greatest drug lord. Quintero opened up Zambada's eyes and showed him how marijuana was just the tip of the iceberg. He wanted the whole deal, so he ventured into the most profitable drug of them all, heroin. El Mayo began manipulating, extorting, plotting, and framing like a true drug lord's apprentice. He mastered the art of drug trade by the early and mid-1980s. He became a core member of the Mexican drug infiltration of the U.S., one of the pioneers. Soon, the drug trade began to attract power-hungry, troubled men from all across the U.S. and Mexico, and Zambada found his position dwindling and uncertain. It was here that the true El Mayo was born. He decided that he would one day sit on the drug lord throne he had been serving for many years. It was during this time that he met the second most important man in his life, Antonio Cruz Vasquez, an almost father figure who taught El Mayo some grave lessons of the drug trade nothing else ever could. Vasquez was a legend when it came to trading drugs and gambling. He was fresh out of jail and stumbled into Zambada, and he saw an opportunity. He took Zambada under his wing. Soon, the two conspired to infiltrate the U.S. with more drugs than ever. They got so close they basically became family when Vasquez married Zambada's sister Modesta. The power was unreal. Zambada grew more into his grand name of El Mayo by buying every police officer he knew and shutting down anyone who stood against him. Together, the duo owned the whole drug trade. Money rained down like droplets from the sky. The fun was short-lived, though. Danger from the Mexican government, police, and the DEA drove El Mayo and Vasquez away from Mexico and into the U.S., and there began a charade of never-ending parties. Lavish destinations were visited for vacations, and the most glorious cars were purchased. The feds sniffed something fishy very soon, and the Vasquez-Zambada drug lord days ended with Vasquez being arrested after an $18 million sting operation. It was the first time that El Mayo's real name had come up in investigations. Still not arrested, he learned the most valuable lesson of his life. He was God after Vasquez's downfall, and there was no one who could touch him if he never indulged in his riches. He began keeping the lowest profile ever. It was then that El Mayo caught the eye of the father of all drug lords, El Patrino, or the Godfather, who ran the Guadalajara drug cartel in the late 80s and early 90s. During the same time, another apprentice had worked his way up to becoming one of the most feared men on the planet, El Chapo, or Joaquin Guzman. The two had never truly worked together, but when the Guadalajara cartel broke up into two factions, both men knew exactly what roles they had to take up. Guadalajara lost its glory and split up into three new cartels: Tijuana Cartel and Juarez Cartel and the Sinaloa Cartel. Originally, El Chapo was the main man for the Sinaloa Cartel, but there was someone much more powerful pulling the strings in the background. El Chapo felt stuck between the Juarez and Tijuana cartels that controlled the north and south sides of Mexico. El Chapo could find no way but to ask for help from the man who could negotiate anything, El Mayo. His time with Vasquez had made him an excellent talker who could manipulate just about any situation. El Chapo and El Mayo joined forces, and chaos ensued. The cartel wars continued. El Chapo's name came up in the papers, but El Mayo remained low-key and operated the greatest drug cartel from the shadows. El Mayo's wrath came on like no one else when his car was bombed on his son's birthday. He was supposed to be in that car. He was supposed to die that day, but fate had different things planned. It was on that day that he decided to take revenge. He was out for blood, and the plotting cartel, the Tijuana Cartel, would never see the light of day after what they had done to him. He doubled his drug trade, increased revenues by 100%, and took the Sinaloa Cartel to an untouchable, unreachable height, where no one would dare look upon him and his family. El Chapo caught all the attention during this time. He was the face of the Sinaloa Cartel. He was arrested twice in the 90s alone, and El Mayo remained untouched during all the raids on the cartels. It was as if the police itself was scared to find the man behind it all, and even when El Chapo was arrested, the workings of the Sinaloa drug cartel were not affected by any means, because the stringmaster sat in his dark chair doing the same thing he had done before. The Mexican police did everything in its power to get El Mayo, but the most mysterious man on the planet remained aloof. He was everywhere, and he was nowhere. Even when his brother Jesus the King Zambada was arrested due to drug charges, he had very little information on his brother, which was of no use to the police. El Mayo was nowhere to be found, even when his own son, Ismael Zambada Imperial, was arrested by the police. He promised to give sensitive information that would lead the police and DEA to the most private drug lord on the planet, but that did not help either. El Mayo gave many clandestine interviews over the years, but never truly showed himself. The people were eager to know him, yet he kept the mystery alive even during those interviews. He remains hidden in the mountains of Mexico somewhere, and there's still no chance of him ever being found. Even now, when his health is ailing and he's struggling with old age and plagued with diabetes, El Mayo is a name to be associated with legend and myths. His legacy shall remain as the last true boss of the Sinaloa Cartel, a man who learned to govern the hard way. So what do you think should be a poor man's way out of the system? Should he let poverty eat him and his loved ones away? Or should he tear the rules of law and snatch what is his? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. To know more about the life and impending death of El Mayo and the world's most feared drug lords, subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up.